Ladies and gentlemen, the conference is starting in 1 minute, so please take your places. Okay. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our hearing about human rights and religious minorities. My name is Jonas Adelin. I'm a member of the Parliament for the Social Democratic Party and also your host today. The right of freedom and the right of freedom of religion, belief, and conscience is a complex issue. Freedom of religion and belief were limited or non-existent in 64 out of the world's 198 nation states, according to a study made by Pew Research Center. When Danmission asked me to host a conference with this subject, I actually didn't hesitate because it's such an important... Now everybody can hear me. When Danmission asked me to be host for this conference, I didn't hesitate because it was such an interesting and relevant subject. Today we are specifically focusing on the situation in Pakistan. The case could actually also have been in any other countries, in Middle East, in Asia, or even in Europe, especially right now, where we are witnessing sad attacks on Muslim graveyards, for instance, right here in Denmark. The overall intention of this hearing is, first of all, human rights and the rights of religious minorities, limitation of freedom, freedom of religion, discrimination, and persecution. As a fast-developing country and being a multicultural and religiously very diverse, Pakistan is in that sense a very interesting case that we can learn from. The other intention of this hearing is to discuss what Denmark can do to promote and protect freedom of religion and belief, whether it's Christian, Shia, Ahmadiyya, or Sunni women, for instance. Their human rights and religious rights will today be discussed by distinguished experts. Therefore, let me underline, especially for our diaspora or Danish Pakistani organizations, that the intention with this hearing is not just to make Pakistan look like the bad guy, not at all. The intention is to focus on a growing problem also in Pakistan, and to learn from this hearing and use that knowledge wisely. So, saying that, I have also some practical information for you. We have the bathroom just on outside. You have to go up the upstairs at the first floor. And you are not allowed to have coffee here in this room. And these were the practical informations. But before I give the word to our mediator, I would like to thank some persons, and especially Danmission and Human Rights Institute, for raising minority issues and minority rights. So, let me introduce our mediator, Rushi Rashid, who's a very known debater, writer, and also a journalist, and she has a very popular radio program called Rushi's Roulette, where she actually raises subjects or issues on according challenges of integration and minority rights in Denmark. So by saying that, once again, welcome. I hope you will enjoy our hearing today. And Rushi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I think it's working now. Thank you, Troels. Thank you so much for the introductory words, and I won't take that much time. I'll forward the word to Mr. Jonas Jørgensen, Danish Missionary Council to frame the 2 hours that we have together ahead of us. So we are all tuned into the topics that we will be hearing a lot about.
I'm waiting for something great to happen. While we are waiting, I would like to say thank you very much, Yildiz Akdogan, for hosting this hearing on freedom of religion and belief. Thank you, Rushi Rashid, for the welcome. Dear Bishop, dear Asma Jangir, ladies and gentlemen, in my introduction to the right of freedom of religion and belief, I will present briefly what this right means, what the current challenges are, and why Danish politicians and organizations should react now. My overall point is that there's both a moral and a practical necessity in addressing the question of freedom of religion and belief. There's a moral necessity in it, insofar that we have an ethical obligation to protest on behalf of those whose freedom of religion and belief is curtailed. But there's also a practical necessity in it, insofar that we see the sad results of lack of freedom of religion and belief in the high number of refugees arriving in Europe today, many of whom does not see a future for themselves as a religious minority in their country of origin. The number of people forced to leave their ancestral homelands today because of their religious faith has reached an all-time high point. Humanitarian crisis because of terror, persecution, oppression and violence has spread in a number of countries. In Iraq, Syria, Nigeria, the Central African Republic, Myanmar, we witness loss of human lives, dignity and freedom. Lack of freedom of religion and belief is a central component in these mentioned conflicts, and religious persecution is widespread. In Syria and Iraq, Yazidis, Shia Muslims, and Christians are fleeing the Islamic State. In Nigeria, Muslims and Christians suffer from the attack of Boko Haram. In the Central African Republic, Silica and anti-Balaka militias are struggling for power, and thousands have been killed. Myanmar, more than 100,000 Rohingya Muslims and a similar number of tribal Kachin Christians have fled violence and state-sponsored persecution. In addition, our case today, Pakistan, has witnessed a number of attacks on minorities, causing the death of more than 400 Shia Muslims and at least 28 Christians within the last year and a half. Our current situation calls for promotion of the fundamental freedom of religion and belief as a key to future tolerant societies where majorities respect and protect minorities and minority rights. What does freedom of religion and belief mean? The right is defined by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You can see the text on the PowerPoint here. Freedom of religion and belief is, in other words, one of the fundamental rights of freedom for the individual. Freedom of religion includes right to change religion, freedom to worship in community, and the right to manifest beliefs in practice. This freedom is a premise for freedom of opinion and expression and freedom of peaceful assembly. Because freedom of religion is a fundamental right, and because of the lack of freedom of religion is a life-threatening reality for thousands of peoples today, freedom of religion and belief is an important priority. Therefore, as a representative for faith-based organizations, I was happy to notice the mentioning of freedom of religion as a special priority in the regeringsgrundlag Sammen for Fremtiden from June 2015. And it is my hope that our program this afternoon might help substantiate how Danish politicians and NGOs can work with this important and fundamental right. What then is the current state of freedom of belief and religion? In 2013, 44 of the world's 198 states had a high or very high restriction of freedom of religion and belief. Approximately 2/3 of the world's population live in societies with these high or very high restrictions on freedom of religion and belief. Statistically, the lack of freedom of religion and belief, we see, is a large phenomenon impacting the lives of a large part of the population of our world. Some of the heavily populated countries restrict freedom of religion through their legislation. Myanmar, Egypt, Indonesia, Russia, and Pakistan might be mentioned as examples of this. We also know the state of affairs in North Korea, which is in a category of itself. But also China should be mentioned as a country with very restricted freedom of religion. There's also a number of countries where social conflicts are caused by a lack of freedom of religion on a social level, and I'm here thinking of India, which tops the list with the highest number of social conflicts where religious affiliation or religious conversion is part of the controversy. What kind of problems do we talk about when we talk about lack of freedom of religion and belief? Well, the one end of the spectrum is persecution, by which I mean violent persecution of a religious group, where the state of persecution is characterized by violence. Discrimination is the other end of the scale, treating a group or individuals different from other groups because of their religion or belief. Violence is a grave problem for many people today. Religious persecution is a huge problem. However, discrimination is the common problem and the big problem for minorities across a number of contexts. Social or political limitation of freedom of religion, social or political exclusion because of religious affiliation, or juridical sanctions because of religious beliefs are examples of such discrimination. Many examples could be mentioned, but I will restrict myself to two. Anti-conversion laws in India, in a number of Indian states, and the anti-blasphemy laws in Pakistan might serve as examples of legislation designed by states to stress minorities, reminding them to keep down and not to make a fuss about themselves. Why should Danish politicians and organizations act now? As mentioned above, faith-based organizations, which I represent, wholeheartedly welcome the current focus on freedom of religion and belief for minorities. Religious persecution and discrimination against religious minorities in Iraq, Syria, Nigeria, Central African Republic, Myanmar, or Pakistan does not stop at the border of these countries. Refugees flee persecution and are encountering European borders in large numbers. Therefore, the protest against lack of freedom of religion and belief is, first of all, a moral imperative. We protest on behalf of those minorities whose freedom is curtailed. A minority enjoy all the same rights as a majority group. But there's also a practical necessity in tackling this fundamental right now. The protest is a practical necessity insofar that refugees from conflict areas where extremism and violence threaten the future of minorities. We have a responsibility as a country in handling the large number of refugees, but also in fighting religious extremism and violence disguised as religious devotion. Therefore, we see it as an encouraging sign that this right, the freedom of religion and belief, is now promoted to the same high place as other rights. Women's rights, freedom of expression, or the rights of sexual minorities are all important rights, and we believe that freedom of religion and belief is an equally important right. Therefore, it's my hope that we, this afternoon, might help each other substantiating how we can help minorities through strengthening their rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the words. I think everybody is quite sure about all the challenges that we are facing, talking about minorities and human rights and so on. Our next speaker is Mogens Kjær, General Secretary of Danmission. And besides the history of how Danmission ended up working in Pakistan, Mogens will share with us which projects that we are currently working on in Pakistan in cooperation with the Church of Pakistan. And before I give you the full word, please check your mobile phones and switch them off, or maybe put them to a buzzer or something. Mogens.
Thank you, Yildiz Akdogan, for hosting this hearing, and thank you for our prominent guests from Pakistan who have come, and also a lot of Pakistani friends from here. It's very nice to see you. I'm going very briefly to tell you about Danmission in Pakistan. First the history, and then what we are doing now. It started in 1903, where a medical doctor called Marie Holst was sent to the northwestern part of Pakistan. They felt they were called by God to work among the Pathan people in northern Pakistan and Afghanistan. In the beginning, they lived in tents, both because they were waiting and hoping to get entrance into Afghanistan, and also because they wanted to easily be able to move around in a quite big geographical area. So amusingly, the first mission was called the Tent Mission. They were never granted permission to enter Afghanistan, so finally they settled down in Pakistan and built up a traditional Christian mission. They shared the gospel that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, and the church grew out of that. They served the whole community with education and medical help. And the church is still doing that today, even nowadays treating wounded Taliban jihadists. The church members are not converts from Islam, but from the Hindu community, from the lowest part of the society, casteless people with the meanest jobs. The church is therefore a vulnerable community, being discriminated and sometimes persecuted, both because of their social background and because of being a Christian minority in an Islamic country. And they share that fate with other minorities like Ahmadiyya, Sikhs, Shia, and Hindus. I once asked the former bishop of Peshawar, Mano Rumal Shah, why he and others remained Christians under such circumstances, because it would be much, much easier for them to convert to Islam and be out of this discrimination and suffering. And he said, that is because Jesus Christ is giving me another relationship with God than Muhammad. Our faith, whatever it is, Christian or other, is something that is deeply rooted in us, in our souls, our hearts, our blood, our bodies. So religious people are even willing to die for their faith. Therefore, the right of religious freedom is so essential. Lastly, how we work together with the Church of Pakistan today. So we give some support of the church. The 0.5 is not how much we give, but that the Christians in that province accounts for about 0.5% of the population. One of the programs are empowerment of young people and women. We support a mental health care center and a fellowship called Faith Friends, consisting of representatives from different religious communities, Shia, Sunni, Christian, and so on, and they step in and try to solve conflicts in Pakistan. We support a Christian study center in Rawalpindi, and lastly CLASS, who is a group of lawyers who step in to help Christians when they are in court cases. So it's especially the Faith Friends and CLASS that is important when it comes to the fight for religious freedom. Thank you.
Now we have had two speakers speaking about some of the minorities, and the next two guests, they are actually belonging to two different minority groups of Pakistan who have had some experiences, life stories that they would like to share with us. So I'm not going to say a whole lot, but I'll invite, first of all, Marina Sams, please come up. And your background is that you are asylum seeker here in Denmark. You've been here for 6 years, and you're still asylum seeker. Please join the dais and let's hear your story.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marina Sams. I came here 6 years ago with my husband, Robert Sams, and my daughter, Leona Sams, who was only 6 months old at that time. We came here to seek asylum because we have been through a lot in Pakistan because of being Christians. We have shared the choking details with the Danish immigration and the refugee board. And if you would like to hear more, you are welcome to contact me or my lawyer later. My daughter, Leona Sams, was born in week 28, and the doctors did not check her eyes because of that. She is partially handicapped. My brother, Christopher Castle, who was 42 years old and lived in Rawalpindi, was beaten to death by the police in Pakistan. My family has been harassed by the police for many years, in Pakistan. My brothers have been arrested and beaten for no reason. My husband was also arrested before we came to Denmark. My mother, she came in 2011 to Denmark and sought asylum. She was deported back 2 years after, and she was forced to convert to Islam. And we fear that the same would happen to us if we go back. We came here for help, leaving our families behind. We've been missing them for 6 years now, and even after 6 years now, me and my husband had to separate because it wasn't safe for us to be together here in Denmark. I am left alone with 2 kids and 1 on the way now, and with no help. I miss my husband, and the kids miss their father. Thank you for taking all the time to hear us. We appreciate it.
That's one of the stories, and well, I don't need to put any more word than what Marina told about herself. The next speaker, or the next eyewitness, is Ataur Rahman. You belong to the Ahmadiyya community in Pakistan, and what we are going to hear is your experience during the riots in 1974, where a lot of Ahmadiyya was subjected to a lot of violence and so on. Please come.
Thank you, Rishi, and respected audience and honorable panel. It is very hard to sum up in five minutes, but I will try my best. Well, my name is Atta, as she said. I'm 58 years old. And I'm a born Ahmadi. I was raised in Punjab province in Gujranwala city. I was educated there, and then I went to Lahore for higher education as an architect. Like many other Ahmadi Muslims, I have experienced persecution firsthand, and that's why I'm here to share my experience, which are very sad. Unfortunately, the history of persecution of Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan is a chapter written in blood. It is a sad chapter, which can bring tears even the most hardened person's eye. My story is from a time when I was just 17 years old. I was in college, and it was year 1974. In 1974, Parliament of Pakistan, under the leadership of Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, passed a law declaring Ahmadis as not Muslim. Mind you, this is the first example in the history of world where a parliament have declared on someone's faith. Prior to declaration, an agitation was planned in different parts of the Pakistan against the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam. Ahmadis were harassed, looted, injured, and even killed for their faith. After those riots, assembly was called in, and all the parties unanimously declared Ahmadis as non-Muslim. My city, Gujranwala, was the worst example where many houses, shops were looted, and around 14 people from my community, they were killed. That was very new for me at that time. Before that, we had been enjoying a peaceful neighborhood and society. But this ordinance, declaration, gave free hand to the people to insult us whatever the way they like. I clearly remember that day. It was, I think, 29th of May, 1974, and it was Friday. After the Friday prayer, riots were broken in different parts of Pakistan, and in Gujranwala, after Friday prayers, we were hearing that people are looting and burning the properties and hurting people as well. Our house was almost in the periphery, so we were spared a day. I clearly remember standing at the rooftop of our house, and where we can see smoke flying around from different part of the city in the skyline. We can clearly see. And my father was, because he was general secretary in our Jamaat there, and he know all those people, and he was pointing, Mr. Qadar's house is burning there, and maybe XYZ's house is there, and shops are there, And, well, on the second day of the riots, we drove to another city. Why? Because one of my brother, he came with a knife, which we are usually using on sacrificing an animal, So my father asked, why you have this knife? He says, when people are coming, well, we have to defend. No, you can't defend our head of community, our Khalifa. Never ask us that we should take weapons in our hands in defense as well. So that's why my father decided that following the Prophet Muhammad's traditions, we should leave this city. And we migrated to another city. And we were hiding for 3 months in Rawalpindi. Bishops is also from there. We were not only the victims of social boycott when we came back. When we came back, our house was looted. My father's shop of Singer machine was no more. He lost his contract with the Singer machine. So we started our life with no penny. We had to live whatever saving we had. We were not only the victims of social boycott, but we were also mistreated. Is this time now? Okay.
Time is running, yes.
Okay. Well, I will just get it short that there are different phases in my life where my brother was also beaten as a doctor, and he lost his life in exile in Canada. Recently, my sister is relocated another place because people from religious communities, fanatics, they have threatened them that they should leave their house. And well, all this cost we are paying because of General Ziaul Haq. He made our life very difficult. Asma Jahangir is here. She can mention, maybe throw lights on those laws regarding 298 and 295. This is clause in our, but I wish this gathering will bring us to a conclusion where we can do something better for the humanity. God bless you.
After listening to two eyewitness reports, as you can say, we move further on to Bishop Humphrey Peters, who is Bishop of Peshawar, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. He is the backbone of our relationship with Pakistan. And with your network, the connections, you are seen as our guarantee that the help that we would like to do or to give to Pakistan, that it reach out and come to those who need it. In our new government platform or policy paper, there's a huge aim for working with undeveloped countries, and it's written that we will help persecuted Christian minorities. So if there are people here present from the administration, maybe you should start taking notes of what Bishop Humphrey Peters has to say, because I know that you have a lot of suggestions of how to do something about some of the things that we've heard. The word is yours.
Thank you, Rushi. Thank you, very kind of you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having us in your country, Denmark. And I bring greetings from the Church of Pakistan. My focus will be the Christians in Pakistan, and then later on maybe Mrs. Asma Jahangir will be covering other minorities, but the way we feel and we understand the things that I'm going to share with you. It's a joy and a privilege to be among you and to share a few of the things that we experience almost every day. And I'm really, I would like to extend a very big thanks to the Member of Parliament for the Social Democrat, Yildiz Edgrom, and the Danish Institute for Human Rights, the Council of International Relations of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Denmark, and of course, Danish Mission Council and Danish Mission in Denmark. We are indebted to all of them for bringing this issue to life. I would say that our country is going through a difficult time, and the extremism, fundamentalism, and militancy is growing every day. And the already marginalized group, that is the religious minority, we become the main victims somehow. And I would say that I am one of them. Though I'm a bishop, but yet I am one of the victims as well. But our struggle for our identity, for our existence, and our survival is becoming difficult with the passage of time. Today's Pakistan is not the one that was just about 25, 30 years back. It was a Pakistan having tolerance, harmony, and peaceful coexistence in between the different religious groups. Today, it is my sincere hope that our today deliberations may enable us to find out some avenues that could lead us towards peace, tolerance, harmony, and to further comprehend the concept of peaceful coexistence. It is my prayer to Almighty God that may our joint efforts, all of us who are sitting today, and whom I have mentioned in my opening remarks, that our joint efforts bring forth some encouraging and memorable results for the good of the total humanity. I would like to give you, to refresh your knowledge, just a small background of Pakistan. Just a little bit, just to refresh your knowledge. Pakistan is in the South Asia. It is bordering with India on the east, Iran and Afghanistan on the west, and China in the north. On the south is the Arabian Sea. The total area is 796,000 square kilometers. Population of Pakistan is almost crossed 180 million. And ethnic groups are Punjabis, Sindhis, Pathans, Baloch, Mahajar, Urdu-speaking immigrants from India and their descendants, Saraiki and Hazarajat. I'm just giving you a just brief introduction just to refresh your information about Pakistan. Muslims are about 95%, and religious minorities are Christians 2.5%, Hindus are 2%, and other are 0.5%. Languages that we speak are Urdu, English, Sindhi, Pashto, Balochi, Hindko, Brohi, and Saraiki, and Punjabi with different dialects. Our literacy rate is little more than 45%. And the government type is parliamentary democracy, and date of independence was obviously 14th August 1947. Per capita income is about $1,275 as per World Bank record. On the poor country list, Pakistan is at 146 number. 40% of people live below poverty line. It is worth mentioning that at the time of independence of Pakistan, when it was in two parts, West Pakistan and East Pakistan is present Bangladesh, the total population was about 76 million. And 34 million were in West Pakistan and 42 million were in East Pakistan. Now it is worth noting that that time, the religious minorities were 25% of the total population at the time of independence. And out of 25%, 10% Christians were only in Punjab province, one of the big province. 10% of them were in Punjab province only. Now there's a drastic decline of the religious minority. Now the total religious minorities are 5% of the total population of 180 million people. So there is a drastic decline from 25%, and total were about 76 million. Out of that, 76 million at the time of independence, 1947. Now it is 180 million Pakistanis, and the minorities have gone down to 5% only. And out of these 5%, just 2.5% are Christians. Now the question arises, why are we crying? What is our plight? Why are we jumping up and down? The reason is this, that at the time of creation of Pakistan, the Christians, I told you that I'm focusing on the Christians only today. The Christians supported Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the All India Muslim League. When there was substantial opposition in and outside the country, that was India, some Muslims, especially the religious leaders, did not hesitate to label the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, as the British agent. The Christians paid no heed to these remarks and continued supporting Jinnah at the cost of opposing their own British co-religionist. The leader who played a significant role in the Pakistan movement were Diwan Bahadur S.P. Singha, Speaker of the United Punjab Assembly, later Speaker of the Western Punjab Assembly, Advocate Chaudhry Chandu Lal, Mr. Fazl Elahi, he was the photographer and a journalist, and Mr. F.E. Chaudhry and B.L. Raila Ram. The Christian community, as an expression of affection with Muhammad Ali Jinnah, arranged many historical receptions in his honor for supporting his cause. On the 19th of November 1942, a great reception in his honor was arranged at the King's Garden, Faisalabad, and which was known as Lailpur in the good old times. The very next day, another reception was hosted at the large hall of Loring Hotel in Lahore. On the 21st November 1942, Diwan Bahadur S.P. Singha, who was the registrar of the Punjab University, arranged a grand reception in honor of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. The reason of telling these facts are, the historical facts are, that at the time of independence, Christians openly supported the creation of Pakistan and openly supported Muslim League and openly they really opposed the British government. And then later on, Mr. Amiruddin, a prominent, when there was an election for the Lahore presidency of the Muslim League, Mr. Amiruddin was the person, and what happened that a prominent Muslim leaguer and the president of Anjumane Hamayat Islam contested the election for the presidentship of Lahore. In this election, some Muslim leaguer betrayed him, whereas he became successful with the support of Christian. When the general election of 1946 were held in India, the Christians supported Muhammad Ali Jinnah and contested the election side by side with the Muslim League. Mr. Fazil Elahi and the Diwan Bahadur S.P. Singha were elected to the Punjab Legislative Assembly. And after achieving substantial success in 1945-46 election, the All India Muslim League emerged as the sole spokesman of the Indian Muslims, but was denied the same status by the Congress and the British government. At that juncture, the Christian leader Joshua Fazluddin issued the news statement saying, when the Muslim League had achieved importance, it was the duty of the British government to accept that fact. I mean, it was the Christian who promoted this. And then, right, I think, Rishi, I had about 20 minutes, not 5 minutes.
We have plenty of time when you come to the panel discussion.
Right, because I don't think it will be possible. Acha? Right. Anyway, now coming to just wanted to tell that this was the situation that Christians of Pakistan supported Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Later on, what happens that Church of Pakistan came into being in 1970. It was the combination of Anglicans, Lutherans, Methodists, and Scottish Presbyterians. And it is going on. We have got 8 dioceses. I am one of the 8 bishops in one of the dioceses, that is Peshawar Diocese. Now, just quickly looking at the condition of the Christians today in Pakistan. We won't go to it. We will say that already every day Christians are faced with the following cruel realities. The concept of basic trust, equality, freedom. Do we have to change with this? Yeah. Freedom, peace, justice, hope, rule of law, dignity, and prosperity appears only to be a dream for the majority of the Christians. Setting on fire the Christian colonies, church compound, church building, false accusation of blasphemy, burning the Christian alive, prejudices, indifferent attitudes have become the destiny of Christians today. Biased attitude in the jobs, promotion in the offices, religious discrimination, and in some area considered as untouchables. Majority live in fear. Sometimes it appears that we are refugees within our own country. Our educational institutions, nationalized in 70, have not been returned to Christians as yet. most of the Christian institutions. Now, we'll just quickly go to the main root cause. The root cause is distortion of the historical facts which I was trying to share with you, evasion from the founder of Pakistan, Jinnah's vision and mission, misuse of the teaching of the Holy Quran, promotion of religious fundamentalism, extremism and militancy, poor economic condition, illiteracy, promotion of intolerance and disunity, especially at the grassroots, limited projection of other faiths on media. We get only 50 minutes on Christmas and Easter for our religious programs. And then biased educational, legislative, social and political environment, treatment as second-class citizen, Christian educational institution must come back to their rightful owners. Amit, there are suggestions for the Danish NGOs and others. I'll just quickly go to that what Danish NGOs can possibly do. It will straight away come to the short-term plans, build up mutual trust through interfaith activities, enable the fast-dying institution, helpful to develop human relationship, skill development initiative for the marginalized, survival through print and electronic media. If the government could return back our nationalized educational institutions. And long-term plans are economic empowerment, social acceptability, strengthen the already existing administrative and management infrastructure, strengthen the already existing institutions, education and skill development opportunities, use of print and electronic media. What the Danish government might take into account, it's advocacy, wherever support is committed by the Danish government or European government, European Union for Pakistan, it should be, some portion should be allocated for the marginalized as well. Now I'm just going to close it down because of time constraint. And I'm just going to quote one of the saying of the founder of Pakistan, and you can see it. He said, Islam and its idealism has taught us democracy. It has taught equality of man, justice and fair play to everybody. In any case, Pakistan is not going to be a theocratic state, to be ruled by a priest with a divine mission. We have many non-Muslims, Hindus, Christians and Parsis, but they are all Pakistanis. They will enjoy the same rights and privileges as any other citizen and will play their rightful part in the affairs of Pakistan. This was Muhammad Ali Jinnah, February 1948, talk on Pakistan broadcast to the people of USA. We, the Pakistani Christians, wish and pray that we may also enjoy the same rights and privileges as indicated by the founder of Pakistan. We must not be pushed and considered as second-class citizens, alien, migrant, or even slaves in our own country. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Humphrey Peters, Bishop. Now it's the next honorable speaker. Well, I don't know whether I should say it or not. I've written here that you are known as a very tough cookie and one of the most sharp voices to be heard when it comes to put the human rights, or rather lack of the same in Pakistan, on the global agenda. Ms. Asma Jahangir is a human rights lawyer and made a report on the status quo of how the situation is for minorities. We've heard from Humphrey Peters that the Christians are not really having a good time. But if you look at overall human rights in Pakistan, the case is quite similar. So I must say, I read some of the report yesterday, and I'm quite shocked about the numbers of the assaults that you have been able to define. But I hope there is some kind of a hope, and I hope that you can give us that hope for how and when there is the time for do something about it. So the word is yours.
Well, thank you very much for this kind introduction, and also thank you for inviting me here, particularly to talk about religious freedom, something that I have cherished all my life, as I think it is the core of all human rights, freedom of religion or belief. But I will straight away jump to Pakistan, because I know that time is limited. We have several religious minorities in Pakistan, starting from Parsis, who are an affluent group and are not persecuted in any way. We have Ahmadis, the worst persecuted of all minorities. We have Christians, we have Hindus, we have Sikhs. And we also have within the Muslim majority sectarian minorities. And there have been violence between them as well. What I would like to begin by is saying that we have seen a change from the 80s to now. And that change, I'm happy to say, is that unlike earlier, where it was government policy to persecute religious minorities, to be oppressive towards a religious minority, is not there anymore. Except, I would say, in the case of Ahmadis, where still state agents will go to where they live and where they practice their religion, and will give them a reminder of the fact that they are being watched, as though they were not Pakistanis. And there have been also periods of time when there is tension between Pakistan and India. We have seen that the Hindu minority is persecuted by state agents. Young people are arrested for a while on suspicion of spying and then released. But if you will go to the upper echelons of political power, whether to the parliament or otherwise, generally, as it was in the earlier days, there is no policy which says that you must persecute minorities. And I think that we should start with that very positive note. I would say that it's not enough, that the government needs to be proactive in promoting the rights of religious minorities, in looking at the curriculum, and in many places, particularly where Bishop comes from, very recently the curriculum has been changed, and it has promoted religious intolerance. But we do have, apart from government and parliament, which is more sensitive to religious minorities today than it ever was before. They will talk about the rights of religious minorities, which was considered a taboo to talk about in the 80s and the 90s. There is more participation of religious minorities in the political sphere. So the inclusiveness in political circles is there. Whether it is in the parliament, I may not, and I certainly do not agree with the method of their reserved seats, but those reserved seats have the same method for women as well. So it's not only for minorities, it's a lack of vision for affirmative action. And you have, I would say, the Bishop is right, there are few times that Pakistan television stations show religious festivals, but that was not even there before. Now people actually enjoy seeing that. I remember that last time they showed Diwali, there were a number of lawyers who came and appreciated the fact that this was being shown. I know that we have a media that can sometimes be very religiously intolerant. In fact, towards the Ahmadis, they were so religiously intolerant that there was a media anchor who said that it was right to kill them. And indeed, a doctor was killed subsequently a few days later in Sindh. But very recently, again, something of similar nature was said, and the media owners had to apologize. It's not that we don't have our demons in the media, we do. But by and large, the opening of media has actually been able to give more space to human rights violations against religious minorities. And I think that is one of the very welcome things that media has opened up. Civil society is always very vigilant on the rights of religious minorities. So I am a little bit surprised that my young friend who gave testimony here from the Christian community, I appreciate that she has been here and that she is in a difficult situation, but I wish that she had contacted more of the NGOs and media while she was in Pakistan, because her case was not heard there, and I wish that we had heard it there and been able to help her in some way. Violence in Pakistan on religious grounds has been extreme since September 11th, and even before that. In the last few years, 50,000 civilians have been killed in violence which we call religious-based violence. There have been people who have been ministers in government. There have been people who have been doctors, lawyers. Very recently, one of our lawyers from the Human Rights Commission was killed in Multan because he was defending a blasphemy case. This is not to say that I am undermining that there is more threat to religious minorities, certainly not. But what I am saying is that there is a sense of fear that prevails in society because of militancy that is there. And this militancy has been challenged only now in the last few months or a year. And we can already see de-escalation of violence. And Bishop did agree with me that things look a little better in terms of de-escalation of violence. But they have to be even much better, because not only de-escalation of violence is an issue, a human rights and a person like myself feel that when you give too much power to security forces, you actually close the space to civil society and to political governments. So now it is becoming more of a security state. So on the one hand, we do appreciate the fact that the security forces are dealing with militants. But on the other hand, we have seen that it has given the security forces the chance to take space from civilian government, to take space from civilian organizations, to take space from the courts itself. And there is no oversight on the kind of operations that we have. And if oversight is lacking, it can leave behind certain other elements or negative elements that we may have to deal with later. The fact is that there is also lack of governance, so much so that impunity is writ large. So it is not only that somebody will kill a person from a minority community and get away with. I can assure you that prime ministers have got killed and people have got away with it. Anybody can get killed and get away with it because of impunity in that country. And the question that has to be addressed is a question of impunity with special reference to religious minorities. But it cannot be done only for religious minorities unless the system is not put correctly. Religious minorities will continue to suffer along with us. There is fear of militancy everywhere, but more so for religious minorities. There is a breakdown of the justice system completely. And unfortunately, we have a blasphemy law that has been misused to a large extent, and people have become sufferers of this law. But let me give you the 2014 figures. 37 cases were instituted on blasphemy, 24 against Muslims, 6 against Ahmadis, 2 against Hindus, and 5 against Christians. So blasphemy law in the beginning only targeted non-Muslim, but now everybody is a target. So for Muslims who sat there very quietly, thought that it would not touch them, are beginning to realize that once you have a law that can be misused, it will be misused for everyone as well. And very recently, we had a television station that annoyed the military junta, and hundreds of cases against that television station were filed all across Pakistan of blasphemy. So if anybody argues that this law is not misused, that alone, that example alone, indicates the misuse of the law. Then we have, and I'll give you another example because I was very upset today that there is a 22-year-old girl who is in jail in Pakistan on the allegations of having desecrated the Holy Quran. She has been in jail for 5.5 years, and the law says that if a woman remains in jail for a year and a trial does not conclude, she should be given bail. But she has been denied bail. The case went from one judge to another judge to a third judge, and finally before I came, begged that judge, just give me a decision. Don't now linger on the case. Kindly dismiss it if you wish to, but give me a decision. And today the decision was that it's been dismissed. And so if judges of the High Court are scared for their lives, you can imagine ordinary people and ordinary lawyers, how scared they must be. There are social indicators that show that religious minorities are at the lowest ladder. And one of the reasons also is because amongst the Hindu community, untouchability still exists. And I think that is something that the minorities will have to address themselves. The legacy of Zia-ul-Haq continues in certain circles in Pakistan. And like everywhere else in the world, we have our hardcore bigots in our society. And they continuously take us down every time there is an effort to break the society open and to have progressive ideas being heard. I have to say that finally, that like a number of other Muslim countries, we do not have a civil war based on sectarian violence. But we have another kind of a war where a group of Islamic militants want to emphasize and want to impose their set of radical values on the entire society through force. And this is being resisted now by the state because individuals cannot resist it and people cannot resist it because they don't have the arms to do it. And where I think that it is important for people like yourselves is to be able to encourage the government of Pakistan to pursue the policy that they are pursuing now and to be more proactive in addressing the violations or abuses that take place for religious minorities and to be able to empower religious minorities. But governments alone cannot do it too. I think certain responsibility also lies within the minority groups themselves. For example, women within the religious minorities. If you look at their personal laws, a Hindu woman has less rights in Pakistan than a Hindu woman in India itself. Divorce is just taboo. She cannot be divorced. Hindu Widows Remarriage Act still prevails in Pakistan. Caste system, though not on law, but in fact does prevail. Similarly, Bishop would bear me out that the Christian Divorce Act is archaic. It's virtually impossible for a Christian to have divorce in Pakistan. And I think these are also issues that the Christian community is addressing, but needs to be addressed even more. Finally, I would say that what are, at the macro level, what are the issues that we are looking at, not just in Pakistan, but the world over, where there is a lot of division. Not just division in this room, but division at the United Nations level. There is a whole question of what is defamation of religion, which is being pursued not only by Muslim countries, but surprisingly, it was at one time also supported by some European countries and Brazil. Now, if you have defamation of religion as a human rights violation, then I'm afraid the whole foundation of freedom of expression is lost. So what is defamation of religion? Is it a human rights violation or is it not? And I think that needs to be addressed, because we cannot stop debate on religion. We cannot asphyxiate people's minds. We cannot close people's minds. And then the question of choice of religion, conversion. Now, every religion says that it is fine if you convert into my religion, that's okay, but if you convert out of it, then you've got to be punished. So, can people have a choice or not? Is there not a difference between religion and race? Race is something you can't change, but religion is something you can and should be able to change. And then the whole question of gender rights within religion. It's not just a question of personal law, but other forms of gender rights, question of abortion, where I see that the Vatican and the Muslim countries sit together. When you talk of LGBT, they're all together in opposing it on religious grounds. So finally, the question that I pose to you is it individuals that have rights, or is it religions that have rights? In my mind, human rights is individuals that have rights, not an idea and not a religion. Thank you very much.
I must say you are a good student in the class, Mrs. Ma. We are 3 minutes ahead of time, certainly. So the next speaker is Marie Juel Petersen from Danish Institute for Human Rights. We've been listening to recommendation from the religious side. We've been listening from the Eastern side. Now we have some recommendation from the Western side. And based on, I know that you will be talking about 3 principles that you would recommend that we take into our minds when we deal with this.
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks a lot to Danmission for organizing this hearing and for inviting the Danish Institute for Human Rights to participate in this. I think there's a great need for more knowledge on freedom of religion and religious minorities in specific contexts, and for guidelines on how we should act in these contexts. And I think the hearing today has contributed very valuably to that. At the same time, I think there's a need to think and act more broadly in relation to freedom of religion and religious minorities in Danish foreign policy and development aid. As both Yildiz and Jonas have noted in their introductions earlier today, large parts of the world's population live in countries where freedom of religion is restricted, and many, many people are fleeing their countries or fleeing their communities because of religious conflicts. So in my presentation, I will try to sketch out some possible elements of a Danish strategy for protection of religious freedom and religious minorities, inspired by existing initiatives in other European countries, at EU level, and in North America. The Danish Institute for Human Rights has published a small report on this. It can be downloaded from our website, and I also put some copies over there. So my presentation will be based on the report, so if anyone wants to take a nap now, they can do so and read the report later. What I present in the report and what I present here today are only ideas for discussion and inspiration. They're not concrete and detailed recommendations. That would require an in-depth systematic analysis of existing initiatives and experiences, and we don't have that at this stage. So my only recommendation today will be that we initiate such an analysis, but more about that later. First, a few words on existing foreign policy initiatives for the protection of religious minorities and the right to religious freedom. How does it work? The slide here gives a brief overview, and you can find more detailed information in the report. But just to say a few words on that. Historically, of course, the US has been much more active than Europe in this field. They've had an office and an ambassador for international religious freedom since 1998, I think, and Hillary Clinton lately, very recently said that religious freedom is the bedrock priority of our foreign policy. But recent years have also seen an increasing interest at EU level, manifested perhaps most clearly in the formulation of the guidelines for promotion and protection of freedom of religion, which were presented in 2013. And another interesting initiative is the new European Parliament Intergroup on Freedom of Religion, consisting of politicians from a very broad range of political affiliations. Among European countries, we also see an increasing awareness. I'd like to mention especially Holland, Norway, Great Britain, Germany, France, and Italy, and they're all prioritizing freedom of religion and protection of religious minorities in their foreign policies. Some of the initiatives include formulation of guidelines, appointment of special advisors, implementation of pilot projects, establishment of funds for civil society activities, and establishment of all-party parliamentary groups. And while all these strategies, of course, differ in many respects, they seem to converge on three basic principles, which I think are also relevant to consider in a Danish context. One is that initiatives should focus on protection of all religious minorities. That makes good sense if we look at realities on the ground. In countries where religious minorities are discriminated against or persecuted, victims rarely come from just one minority, as has been amply documented today, I think. Persecution of religious minorities, it seems, is not so much about lack of tolerance for a particular religious group as it is about lack of tolerance for anything other than the religion of the powerful majority. So if a society allows persecution of one minority, the door is open for persecution of other minorities. A second important principle is that religious minorities are not the only victims of religious freedom violations. Other groups and individuals are also particularly vulnerable, whether atheists, converts, women, children, or LGBTI people. And often, violations of their rights take place within a religious minority or within a religious majority, as Asma mentioned earlier on. So as such, the work to promote freedom of religion should include any population group that is prevented from freely practicing its religion or belief in the same way as other groups, as it's noted in the Norwegian guidelines. So in other words, it's about protecting freedom of religion for all, regardless of their religion and regardless of whether they belong to a religious minority or not. And finally, a third important principle is that almost all existing initiatives that we see in Europe and in North America are placed within a broader human rights framework. And that makes very good sense too, because the right to freedom of religion is closely connected with other human rights, especially, of course, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and respect for privacy. But other rights are also at play. When people are discriminated against or persecuted because of their religion or lack thereof, it's not only about their right to have or express their belief, it's very often also about their exclusion from security, from education, from health services, from participation in public life, from equal work opportunities, and many other human rights. So that's the three basic principles that I think we should bear in mind when we think about a Danish strategy. In more concrete terms, I think existing initiatives give some good ideas as to what the components of a strategy could be. So, our focus areas, we can call them. For each of these areas, we've suggested a few possible Danish activities. I'll not read them out loud here, but they're all in the report and they will be on the slides that I show. So, first, there seems to be broad agreement on the need for stronger international and regional cooperation to ensure effective monitoring and early warning mechanisms, coordinated efforts, and common reactions to violations of freedom of religion at UN as well as at EU level. And second, there's agreement that the state has the primary responsibility to protect freedom of religion, and there's a need for initiatives that can strengthen governmental institutions and structures in countries where freedom of religion is under pressure, whether through political dialogue, support to legal reforms, or capacity building of the justice system. A third important component is cooperation with and support to civil society actors. That's an important component in almost all initiatives in Europe, whether in the form of special funds, pilot projects, or other activities. Civil society actors can play an important role in promoting religious freedom, tolerance, and respect, whether through education and training, advocacy monitoring, or interreligious dialogue. It's important to ensure attention to a broad range of actors, including not only secular NGOs and human rights institutions, but also religious leaders, spokespeople for religious minorities, and faith-based organizations. Well, that was supposed to be there. So fourth, most initiatives explicitly acknowledge the need for more knowledge and research on freedom of religion, religious minorities, and the role of religion in foreign policy and development more generally. There's a need not only for legal analysis and quantitative data, but also for context-specific analysis of how religious, cultural, political, and economic factors influence the right to freedom of religion in particular settings. And last, but certainly not least, all existing initiatives point towards the need for strong institutional anchoring in foreign policy, in foreign ministerial structures and strategies and activities. That's the only way we can ensure sustainability and mainstreaming. And that can be done through the appointment of special advisors, through development of guidelines and tools, training of staff, or many other ways. And naturally, a Danish strategy for freedom of religion and religious minorities should not just blindly duplicate these existing initiatives, but seek to complement and strengthen these, reflecting our particular Danish competencies, experiences, and interests in this area. And that requires thorough analysis, and that gets me to my one and only recommendation today. At the Institute for Human Rights, we recommend the establishment of a working group that can initiate such an analysis, and on that basis present concrete and detailed recommendations for the future work. A working group could take the form of an all-party parliamentary group, an expert panel, or a broader knowledge forum. But regardless of the model we choose, it's important to ensure input from civil society organizations, from religious minorities, from researchers, from policymakers, and others with expertise and experience on the topic. We think that an analysis should include, as a minimum, review and discussion of relevant research, analysis and evaluation of relevant international, regional, and national initiatives, a mapping of Danish experiences and activities, and an analysis of relationship to other foreign policy and development priorities. This way, we can ensure a relevant, coherent, and long-term Danish strategy for the promotion of freedom of religion and religious minorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. And now the floor is open. I have a list of questions that I can pose, but I hope you guys here are eager to ask a few questions as well. So that's what we are doing. Carsten, would you take the other mic? Please say your name.
Yes, my name is Abbas Razvi, and I'm a local politician. Well, I'm not here as a politician, but I'm here as a human being. First of all, we must keep one fact in our minds, that all these atrocities, all these assaults and inhuman acts, they are not sponsored by the government. Mrs. Asma Jahangir, you said there is only one exception, and that is Ahmadiyya group. I don't know that much about Pakistan that I can deny the fact. But if that's the fact, then it should be condemned by all means. The problem is that when we talk about minorities and their problems, we talk about people who have suffered from them, and we have some suggestions and some answers. But we don't consider the roots. That's the problem. What are the roots of these things? I come from a neighborhood in Pakistan where I was born and raised. It was a beautiful community of different beliefs, different ethnicities, and different kind of races, ranking from Parsis to Ahmadis, to Hindus, and etc., etc. We had no problems. We lived in a harmony because we gave space to each other. But the problem is that because of the poverty, because of our our contribution to the fight on terrorism and so on, we became the victims. So we have to eradicate the poverty and the basic problems in Pakistan. I shall be there to fight for anybody's right. Everybody who is a human has a right and has many rights, and we have to defend them. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. I didn't get the question. If all comments or questions are going to be that long, so very few people will have time to say something. So please keep it short.
Thank you. My name is Bash Qureshi. I work with human rights and ethnic and religious minorities in Denmark and European Union. It's just to Bishop Peters. If you're looking for sympathy, then you came to the wrong country, because Denmark is one of the most Islamophobic countries in whole European Union, which is actually documented. I'm sorry to say that. But I appreciate very much that you came here. We have met before in Pakistan and here, and if anything civil society I represent can do, we'll be more than happy to do that. But my question is to Danmission. I have a question. There are 30,000 Pakistanis living in Copenhagen, or around Copenhagen. Why didn't you invite some Pakistanis so they can be sensitized of what the informations are coming? Because Danes know those information. So next time, Danmission, please invite Pakistanis to your meetings so that they know what is happening to ethnic and religious minorities in Pakistan. The largest minority which is being discriminated in Pakistan is not Christian, but Shia minorities. They're the ones who are suffering most. So you have to build alliances with minority groups, and the work being done by the military and the government now, I think we should be a little bit appreciative. Last, making Pakistan kind of a case, to me, it's not good, because if you look around Pakistan, Sri Lanka, India, Burma, and even in Afghanistan, there is a lot of ethnic and religious minority who are persecuted. So please look inclusively and in an overview, not focus on one country, because that gives a very wrong message. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Izzat, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Izzat James, and I'm coming from Pakistan. And again, I'm feeling like that now. Christians are not a victim, but they are target here now. All of a sudden, we become a target group. So I have a big respect for you, Asma, because you are doing a very good job in Pakistan. But the problem is, things are being turned a little bit. The people, you know a lot that not very many people can reach you, Asma. If the Christians are persecuted, they have no access to you. Maybe they have access, but not very easily they can reach you. My sister was telling a story, and you said that she could come to you or she could come to any organization. People are still, a couple been dragged in a whole village in front of their children and afterward been burned. No one come to help them. In Lahore, the house has been burned of Christians. No human rights organization reached them. A boy been burned recently in Lahore, no help. Things happens, and things happens very fast. And as a minority, like I am a minority of Christian, I'm coming from the Christian, it's very difficult as a minority to have access, people like you, and you know that in police stations and all the upper, they are Muslims, and they are sitting some fundamental Muslims. They will never help you. And I think probably you can put a little bit focus on that. Thank you very much.
I need to respond to that, just 1 minute.
Yeah, I think we should...
I'm certainly not doubting what you're saying, but this is not normal. And people don't have to come to me. There is media in every city. There are tons of organizations in every city. I'm just an individual. And yes, there have been mob violence that has taken place, and people have not been able to stop it in time. But there has been an outrage that has been now expressed because of the consistent work of all civil society in saying that the rights of not just religious minorities, but religious violence has to be stopped. You have no idea of how many incidents have been stopped because of early warning and because prevention was taken place at the right time. and how many could have been stopped if the government had acted when they should have. So I am certainly not saying everything is great in Pakistan, certainly not. I am saying that it's a little better because previously it was even worse. And I am also saying that we are bad and our record is not good. But when you look around, now unfortunately you even have worse records around. Things have become even worse for a lot more countries. And lastly, I think that I said earlier as well, it is not just the responsibility of the government to say, we are not doing anything to them. It is also the responsibility of government to be proactive. And there, the government has failed to be proactive, not only to protect the rights of religious minorities, protect the rights of women, protect the rights of children who are abused every day, because it is just a government that lacks governance, and it is just sitting there in fear of being deposed by the military. So we are going through a stage and a phase in our country where we are dysfunctional at the moment. That's all that I'm saying. And believe me that you have probably seen the 80s, but I have too. And I can tell you that my colleagues who are Christians, and I have plenty of them, I feel really awful when they tell me, I worry the minute my child steps out of the house, whether the child will come back or not. And I keep telling them, please don't discuss anything. Don't say anything to anyone. Don't make friends with a Muslim, because they may accuse you of blasphemy. And I know the real fear that religious minorities live in Pakistan. All I'm saying is that a little better, and we need to work for it to become much better.
Thank you so much. I think the three organizers of this hearing should respond to the next question posed by Abashi, that how come that you haven't invited the Pakistani organization to take part today, because they apparently feel that this is a downgrading of Pakistan, having a hearing without the Pakistani voices, local Pakistani voices. Bones?
Yeah, we can say you are right.
You have to turn off yours, and then you have to turn up your...
That the point is taken. We could have done so and should have done so. We know that you have a lot of information that is very valuable, and we are very, very happy to see you. And you can also raise your voice here in the debate. We have, with this hearing, just been using Pakistan as a case story. I think it was stated before you came that it was not to express that the situation in Pakistan is the worst one or that Pakistan is especially bad. But we have relations with Pakistan, so this is an issue there also. But it is an issue for the majority of people in this world that there is lack of religious freedom. Certainly the situation is much, much worse in countries like Iraq and Syria.
Thank you so much.
I must say something, please, if you don't mind. I take only 2 minutes. I have to press that.
Okay, you have to turn on your mic.
It's very important
Yeah.
to share with particularly friends from Denmark that when Iraq and Syria comes into the picture, what I am saying and the message I'm trying to give is support democracy and democratic values. Why is there religious conflict in Iraq and Syria? Because you had dictatorship for 22 years, very well supported by many of your, not Denmark, but many of the Western countries. When you close all dissent, you will not close the mosque. So the only politics that will take place will be in the mosque. And that will be radicalized politics. And that radicalized politics will be ostracized by the dictator. So the radical will be seen as the underdog, and they will have also a swell of support that underdogs usually have. So please take that as a lesson of not supporting dictatorship. And I have seen in Afghanistan, I was there because I was at that time UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of, on extrajudicial killings. What was the UN doing? having 20,000 NGOs. And I said to Mr. Brahimi, Mr. Brahimi, NGOs cannot run a country. I belong to the NGO sector, but NGOs cannot run a country. What about political parties? We don't want political parties. Well, let us now be more political. I am happy that Pakistan has political parties. I'm not fond of them, and I'm not fond of my politicians. But without political parties and without politics, the world cannot go forward. So what I am saying is, rather than less politics, more politics. And that is what we have to support. The other side has an ideology to offer. I may reject that ideology, but they have something to offer. What does this side have to offer? Nothing but negativism. There is no vision, there is nothing to tell me what does politics of the world define for me. And there is a failure, I'm afraid, not just in Pakistan, but there's a failure in world leadership, in global governance, and we must address that. Don't just address Pakistan. This is something that we have to address very carefully. And I've seen a special rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, that religious intolerance is in every region of the world. Every region of the world. Less so in Latin America, but Western Europe, yes, there is religious intolerance. What about women's headscarves? Is that not religious intolerance? What about UK law of stop and search and racial profiling? So we have to address it in an overall manner, yet not to tolerate any country that is persecuting its minorities.
Okay, let's move a bit ahead. I have three people on the list. It's Attar Rahman first. Please keep it short.
Yeah, I will do that. My question is to you, Sister Jahangir, is that you said that the world is changing in Pakistan as long as freedom of expression is concerned. People are commenting on those things which were in previous days no-touch areas, but I'm a bit scared. Recently, for example, in Ahmadiyya Convention in London, there was ex-High Commissioner, which was also a member of PPP, Waji Shamsul Hassan, and the whole parliament was gathered, and there, I had no voice against that. Okay, he has the right to say, and we have right to oppose what we have done wrong in the past. I mean, it is like maybe his turn is like Governor Salman Taseer and Shahbaz Bhatti, they were killed because their voices voiced against blasphemy law.
What happened to Wajid Shamsul Hassan and the resolution in the assembly, there can be no defense for it. I think it is defenseless. There have been criticism, but far and few, very far and few. And when I said earlier also that as far as the Ahmadis are concerned, the taboo is there. Now, had he gone to a Christian congregation, he would not have got that, flag. Or had he gone to a Hindu temple, he would not have got that flag. So I am quite in agreement with you there. And the story of Salman Taseer and the minister is even sadder. But do you know that today, every year, people stand with candles commemorating the death of Salman Taseer, and people came to attack them, and those people were then arrested, and there are lawyers who are going to make sure that that case is contested.
Asma, could you please say some more word about this minister that was killed, protecting the blasphemy thing? Because there are a lot of people here who don't know who is the person that is being commemorated with candles. Who is he? Could you please?
No, Salman Taseer was the governor, and Mr. Shahbaz Bhatti was the minister for minorities.
Yeah.
And there was a young woman who was accused of blasphemy and then convicted of blasphemy, but her appeal is still going on, and her case is still in the Supreme Court.
Okay. Yeah.
And they supported her, and they said that the law of blasphemy, like all of us say, is misused, and that it is not a fair law. And that is what they said, and they were killed. Salman Taseer was killed by his own official guard. And Bhatti had guards, but he left to see his mother, and they were watching him, and he got killed. I can give you several examples of people who have been killed, Muslims and non-Muslims.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Henrik Rasmussen. I represent the Danish European Mission. Thank you very much for very nice and good comments. I have a question for Mrs. Jahangir concerning textbooks in Pakistani schools. I was given a report at my last visit to Pakistan last year by the National Commission of Justice and Peace, and they are horrifying reading because they contain so many examples of hate material in textbooks. Is that problem being addressed now by the legislators in Pakistan?
Just take 2 more questions, and then I'll come back to you. Then you can answer. And we have more than one person in the panel, remember that?
Yeah, my name is Sajid James, and I'm totally disagree Mrs. Jahangir, and my brother, he was sitting beside of mine. I'm Pakistani Christian. I born Pakistan. I educated by Pakistan. I live 33 years in Pakistan. There is so many discriminations and so many persecutions, and I heard name of the Asma Jahangir when I was very little, but she didn't do anything for the Christian of the Pakistani. She did work for the Muslim and didn't do especially for the Christian of the legislation and anything. And right now, it was the voice of the Christian, Suhail Johnson and Joseph Francis. They are trying to stop the voice of the vilest people. It is not justice. This is not, you are just defending the wrong policies of the government. And this is the real, I am practically through of discriminations and these problems. And my brother, he was saying the Shia is more persecuted than Christian. I don't agree this one, because Shia have all the key jobs. He has the commissioner, he has the general, he has and the policeman, in police department, everywhere. But Pakistani Christian, they don't get an even job, and they don't have any approachment. Even sometimes they go to the advocate, and the people kill till advocate. And the Pakistani Christian community is not appreciable. She don't know about, because she's living in a big house in defense, and she don't know about the real life of the poor people. Thank you.
I think the personal attacks are not allowed, because let's keep it to the subject, not on the person. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Toft Jacobsen. I'm a newly elected member of this parliament, and thank you very much for this hearing, for the presentations until now. I think there is a connection between how and how much we talk about freedom of religion in Denmark on the one hand, and on the other hand, the role freedom of religion plays or does not play in the Danish foreign policy. In Denmark, we have discussed the freedom of expression quite a lot, but we haven't spent much time discussing freedom of religion, I think. Just one example, hope there's time for it. After the terrorist attack in Paris this year, a Danish politician said that the thing that made the terrorists dangerous, the thing that made them different from, for example, Christian people in Denmark, was that they believed that the Quran, that the Quran was the word of God. He said Christian people in Denmark doesn't believe that the Bible is the word of God. So the thing that made them dangerous was that they think that the Quran was the word of God. I think he's wrong. I know a lot of Christians in Denmark believing that the Bible is the word of God. This is just one example of what I think is a not very qualified debate about religion and freedom of religion in Denmark, which influences, I think, the role freedom of religion plays or does not play in the Danish foreign policy. So my question is, am I wrong? And if I'm not wrong, what can we do? What can organizations, what can we politicians, what can people, believing people in Denmark do about this?
Yes, and who would you like to answer your question? Anyone? The three to the right. Okay, Moralsk, Jonas Jørgensen, we haven't heard your voice, so let's take you first. What is your answer to the last question posed?
Yeah, sorry, could you ask the question again, because I didn't quite hear it.
Did I wake you up?
No. Was it? Yes,
it's just, I think the debate in Denmark about religion is not always very qualified, and I think it influences the role religion plays in the Danish foreign policy.
Right. Yes.
So how can we get a more qualified debate about religion and freedom of religion in Denmark?
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you that discussions in Denmark on religion is often not very qualified, in the sense that religion is thought to be something private and individual and should be kept in private and as an individual, not something which to be discussed or valued publicly. And I think that is a certain form of secularism which has, for historical reasons, been popular in Denmark. In other countries, also Western countries, religion play a much more positive role as one of the voices informing or inspiring a common discussion on where do we want to move as a community or as a country. And I think if we as Danes knew more about, not just about religion, but about specific religions, we would be able to value them more in public discussions as well.
Mm-hmm. Marie?
Yeah, let me just add to that I think there is actually a lot of positive developments in this area. There's a lot more interest in religion and in discussing how religion influences development and foreign policy. To break for a small commercial, we have the Danish Network for Religion and Development, which has organized several seminars last year and this year on different aspects of development and religion. And we have in November a course on religion, development and human rights, which is aimed at NGOs, policymakers, researchers, and anyone with an interest in the topic. And what we see when we organize these things is that there's a great interest from a very broad spectrum of people in civil society and in government. So I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot going on.
So you just need to leave your email address and you can come to a conference every day, rest of the year. Yeah, Moralsk.
Yeah. You also raised a question on how we read our holy texts. And that is a very important issue. Because there will be expression in the Holy Quran talking about violence and killings and so on, and you can find such expressions in the Bible too. So how do we read our holy texts? Do we read them in a violent manner or in a peaceful manner? And Christians have also been reading them in a more violent, unpeaceful manner that has created hate speech and a lot of violence, like we see Muslims are doing. So we need to bring religious communities together, and so they meet, learn to know each other, and promote a peaceful reading and a peaceful expression of their faith.
Okay. There was one question posed about the textbooks.
Yeah, I just want to say that very little has been done to reform the textbooks. On the contrary, the curriculum in the Pakhtunkhwa was changed to more liberal outlook in the textbooks. But the new government, which has an alliance with Jamaat-e-Islami, has changed it again. And only a few days just before I came, people were showing me what is in the textbooks. And it is absolutely scary, because there is so much hate material into it that it scares me. But only also to tell my young friend here, that I find that if you're objective about religious minority in the West, that your community can also be very threatening, as you were today, and I will not accept it, because I must stay neutral and objective. I don't live in Defense, but I live in a posher area than Defense, but I'm not living in Denmark. Secondly, let me also assure you that it is a matter of record that I was the first lawyer to take on the cases of blasphemy against Christians. My life was threatened. I was almost killed, not once, but many times. And I don't take cases because X is a Christian or a Muslim or X or Y or Z. I do it when I feel that it is religious persecution, regardless of what religion a person belongs to. Secondly, I have not only criticized my own government, which I continue to do always, but I also believe that when things are changing, you need to encourage them. And when you're fighting oppression, you must fight them vocally. This is my view, and this is a view that I will have. I do understand. If you think I don't understand religious persecution, I wonder who does. I am persecuted on account of religion simply because I stand with religious minorities. There have been times in the newspaper where my marriage has been called not a marriage, my children have been called being born out of wedlock. There have been threats saying that she should be killed. So don't tell me that I don't know religious persecution, but as a human rights activist, I believe in integrity of my work, and that I will continue to have.
Thank you. We have two more questions, and then it's concluding time.
Thank you. My name is Niels Erik Hansen. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I would like to thank the organizers for this very important event. I'm representing asylum seekers from Pakistan, including Ahmadiyas, Christians, and Muslims. And my question is really about the presentation from the Institute for Human Rights. Since I didn't see anything on the issue of protection or the protection needs of these asylum seekers who are fleeing persecution as minority groups in Pakistan. On your list you had a lot of ideas and some recommendations, but what would be the message that you could take on from this event to the Danish authorities, the Immigration Service and the Refugee Board, since I'm really struggling on behalf of my clients and have to take cases to the UN, who will then stop Denmark from deporting my clients from, let's say, the Ahmadiyya religious minority groups. And if that has not been for the UN, my clients would now be back in Pakistan. So I really hope that the Institute can give us some insight in what is your agenda on this.
Yep, and last question.
My name is Atia, and I'm a student. And my question is for the Danish Institute of Human Rights. As I remember, Mrs. Asma Jahangir mentioned that it's also the minorities' responsibility to be proactive and get in contact with, for example, NGOs or other authorities that can help them. But I think in the case of the Ahmadis, it can be a bit different because they are by law declared as non-Muslims. So my question is actually in such cases where it's a bit more difficult for the Ahmadis to get the basic human rights, what could the Danish Institute of the Human Rights do to help them?
We have 10 more minutes to go. And I actually also have a question, and I think I'm going to pose that. Asma, you talked about a lack of affirmative actions. Could you please specify more what you mean by that? And how could the Danish NGOs do something about it to promote or push the process. And I had a question for you as well, Mogens Kjær. Looking at your work in Pakistan, or the relationship that you have with Humphrey and the Church of Pakistan, how do you deal with this view on you, on your work and the connection to Pakistan being missionary work which is disguised in human rights, that you are actually supporting or strengthening Christians? That's another way of looking at you coming from outside and helping the Pakistani Christians. And now to the question. First, you, Marie, you had two questions from Nils Erik and Attia.
Well, regarding the question of asylum and refugees, I'm afraid I'll have to wait with my answer until we hopefully have conducted a bigger analysis. I don't know if perhaps Thomas, my boss, has anything to add on that. Do you have anything?
Hi, my name is Thomas Gammeltoft. I'm working with Marie. But just very briefly, I'd say that obviously this is an area of concern to us, as it is to many other Danish NGOs. More specifically, it's an area where I'm personally working also together with, for example, Niels Nyman Eriksen, and we've had some consultations with the Danish churches in order to make sure that Danish authorities are equipped in a correct manner to assess these cases, which is really the trick here. The positive news, again, is that we actually had a practice change in Denmark in terms of accepting asylum claims based on religious minorities, even if they're not profiled or likely to be profiled by the government. So you can no longer say that you can simply go home, live out your religion behind closed walls. But it is something that's also challenging, not just Danish authorities, but a number of European authorities in terms of how do you really then assess a person's religion. It becomes very subjective. It's a very difficult thing to do, and obviously also theologically controversial. No, I'm not sure I'm equipped with that, maybe.
That was about the Ahmadiyya group.
Yeah, well, I mean, this goes not just for the Christian minorities, but you would say for any kind of religious minority. So there has been a general change of practice here. It's going to look different depending on the background information, what we have on a case-by-case basis. I'm not a spokesperson for the authorities, even though I actually am a member of the Refugee Appeals Board. But we are certainly following background information on various groups and across countries very closely.
Yeah, and coming back to you guys, we had two more questions. The one with affirmative actions for you, Asma.
But I think that there is a number of things that the government can take affirmative action on. But before I say that, let me also say that the young lady there is absolutely right, that even though a religious minority reaches NGOs, for example, we get a monthly update from the Ahmadiyya community, the Human Rights Commission. So we are aware of what is happening. It's not that every time we can do something about it. But at least we know that this is a case, that is a case, and I think that is what I'm talking about, is to be able to reach out to more people so that people understand and know what is happening. What are affirmative actions? There is a number of legislations that the government can easily change without too much opposition. For example, if you look at the social sectors, we have a fund which is called the Zakat Fund, which is given to people who are living below poverty level or near poverty level. It is never given out to a non-Muslim. Now these are things that the government can change. Then we have what is called the Vacuum Trust property. So all the Hindu temples have been taken over by this organization, which does not have a Hindu on the board. And the Hindu community wants ownership of their places of worship. Now these, when you take those measures, this is a message. So the Human Rights Commission has undergone a study, which is completed now, of the kind of actions that they can take immediately and then later mid-term and long-term. Plus, there are policies that the government can make. If you look, there is a Supreme Court judgment that I have with me, which was given out just last year by the Chief Justice of Pakistan. And he has given 9 points of what the government can do, including set up mechanisms or an ombudsperson precisely for discrimination against religious minorities, where they can actually go and take their cases and that be addressed there. Now you can say that he may do or she may do nothing about it, but at least the registration there by itself shows that so much complaints have come in. So these are the mechanisms where now, when the Supreme Court judgment has directed the government to do this, so far nothing has been done.
So this is the message to the Danish NGOs, that these are some of the points that we could push somehow, or what? Moons?
We could push them to at least implement the judgment of their own Supreme Court.
Yeah. About our missionary work, we are not hiding anything. We
Disguising
are openly Christian. This is our faith, our belief. This is what is dear to us and what we want to share with the whole world. Like people of other faiths will have the same want to do the same. And we want there to be freedom in this, so we freely can share what is in our hearts. So to any time we will fight also for the freedom of Muslims in Denmark to share what they want to share. We have programs where we bring Muslims and Christians together in Denmark and in the Middle East, and there's a lot of sharing going on there, where we work for tolerance and freedom. Freedom is, as we see it, a Christian value, and it is a value to many other people also.
Let that be the last word. Thank you so much, panel, for taking all the questions and sharing with us all your good comments and things that we have been listening to for the last almost 1.5 hours. I'll give the next word to Yildiz, and I say thank you for letting me steer this session. And now, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rushi. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and especially our guests from abroad, it was really an honor to hear the perspective from inside what is going on in Pakistan. When you take or raise a subject like this, even if the main focus is human rights and minorities, and being the case of Pakistan, then it's of course also very sensitive. But as I also in my opening speech underlined, the purpose of this hearing was, first of all, focusing on human rights, the rights of religious minorities, limitation of freedom of religion, discrimination and persecution. And because Pakistan in many ways is so diverse and multicultural, etc., then it is an interesting case. But Pakistan is one case of many others, because as also some of the panel guests has mentioned, there are other countries who have also the same challenges in the Middle East, in Asia, and yeah, even if our own very democratic country, we have some challenging things, as I also mentioned. But let me also underline that when we try to raise the subject, which I personally think is very, very important, we did try to be open and invite as many organizations, NGOs as possible, and I'm really happy that so many has attended. I would personally also have wished that we had officials from Pakistan. I mean, by officials I don't mean our guests, but also persons from representative from for instance, the embassy. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But I hope this is a beginning of a continuing debate because it is a very, very important issue. Some of the speakers pointed on the Danish government's role, what could be done, and a lot of things can be done. By having a hearing like this is one way of starting a debate. The other thing is also, Ms. Jahangir mentioned the role of the NGOs. But as a politician who myself has a background with a Turkish-Kurdish root, I also know the voice of the diaspora is very important. So I actually would like to also, on behalf of myself, I hope it's okay, to address that the diaspora, the Pakistani diaspora, whether it's a Hindu, Christian, Ahmadiyya, Sunni, Shia Muslims, to also take their role and try to somehow help some of the organizations in their parents' homeland. Because the role of the diaspora to address some of the issues that we have been discussing today is really, really important. Some of the challenges or the first steps can also actually be started by the help of the diaspora. Mr. Bishop, Humphrey Peter addressed or quoted the founder of Pakistan, as I mentioned, right? Muhammad Jinnah, saying that there might be Hindus, there might be Ahmadiyyas, there might be other groups of Pakistan, but they are all Pakistanis. And I think this is a very important thing to remember when we discuss minority issues. I will actually quote my very beloved grandmother, who is unfortunately not with us anymore. She said, when you know, on the bottom line, whether you believe in one or the other, the important thing is that we are all human beings. And this is also a very interesting perspective to remember when we discuss sensitive issues like minority rights, whether it's in Pakistan, in Denmark, or in any other country. So, first of all, we are human beings. I just want to inform another thing. There is already a group across different parties who are actually working with subjects like human rights and minority rights and religious issues. And our aim also with this hearing was to hopefully that group could grow and continue and address relevant issues now, but also in the future. So I hope you will be interested in that group, and if you are, please do contact us. And finally, I would like to thank our panel. First of all, our distinguished guest from Pakistan, Mrs. Jahangir, and Bishop Humphrey Peters. I would also thank Danmission, Danish Missionary Council, Institute of Human Rights. As I was saying, our hearing had a main focus, and that was, first of all, addressing human rights, minority rights, the right to believe on what you want. This hearing today, I hope it has been useful. I hope you have learned some of the challenges that there are. I at least have really, I knew a little bit about it, but I know there's a lot of things that we still have to address. But our hearing is come to an end, and I hope you won't just run out of the parliament. Please stay here, because we have coffee, and I hope you can use the coffee break or time to get into dialogue, but also hopefully to be part of this group I was mentioning. And if you have comments or ideas or constructive critique, please do contact us, because you can always learn something from these hearings. I hope you have learned a little, and thank you very much for being here for so many hours without any break. You really did manage very well. But I will also say thanks once again to our promoter, Rushi. Please give her a hand again. And thank you, Rushi. And please also to our panel, and especially our distinguished guest who came a long way from Pakistan to give us this very important inside knowledge about what is going on. So, with a huge hand. Thank you. Coffee outside and much more dialogue and much more debate. Yeah. Jeg skulle spørge, hvad hedder han?
Jonas og Fyldt og jeg andre har bygget gerne.
Jamen, jeg så, han har været lidt